there's a huge psychological aspect of the detox, which keeps us in our addiction for so long, especially if we've experienced it before. There's the fear of going into that again that's going to keep me doing whatever I have to do to stay well, not even get high anymore. Okay.
So today's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this. We have Chris Greer.
Yeah.
Yeah? Chris Greer.
Yes.
People say Gear all the time?
All the time.
Yeah, that's okay. I have
It's
a
a
name
tough
that
one.
gets mixed up all the time. Cheree.
Yeah.
Whatever. So, and Will Harris. We've talked about this for a while, having you sit in here and join the conversation. So this should be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I think us three can have a lot of insight together on addiction, recovery. All three of us are in recovery. Mm-hmm. And so we can share a little bit about our experiences and how we've used our experience to help guide our clients and their families through the process of their struggles that they're going through at the moment and over the years. And Chris, you are from Santa Cruz.
Not originally, but
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from a small town in the Central Valley called Denair.
Oh, never heard of that. Where's that by?
Do you know where Turlock is?
Yes.
So Denair butts up to like the east side of Turlock.
Okay.
Tiny little agricultural town. Right now, today, there's one stoplight in the town.
Oh, wow.
And there wasn't one when I grew up there. So, yeah.
Very interesting. And what made you move to Santa Cruz?
My now wife.
Okay.
I was like a year and a half sober, went over to Santa Cruz to visit some friends. And then we went out one night downtown Santa Cruz and I met this woman and then we started dating and I was like ready to get out of Denair. I needed a clean slate. She came and picked me up there one time on the way to Tahoe. And then after that, she was like, hey, just so you know, I'm never moving to Denair. Like, well, I can't wait to get out of here. So this works out perfect. So I moved to Santa Cruz. I think we had been dating like maybe 6 months. I moved over there. So,
okay.
And that was probably 11 years ago now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel, because, Hollister here is a pretty small town. Do you feel that had a lot to do with your addiction? Like there just really wasn't much to do?
I could probably blame it on that.
Yeah.
That was part of it. Not a lot to do. So growing up, we go drink in the orchards and party. And because it was a super small town, it wasn't hard to like get alcohol underage and that sort of thing. But
right.
Yeah.
I wonder if it even really makes a difference, being small town, or even big city with endless things to do. I'm sure kids are still up to no good like we were.
Right. I would have found a way probably.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah. And Will Harris, you and I go way back, and I have the privilege of working side by side you here at Bright Future Recovery. So it's nice to have you here on Hope to Hustle, and you have a lot of knowledge in this area. And yeah, we're just going to open the mic to different things.
Well, I appreciate being here and humbled to be able to work with you after, what has it been, 15 plus years?
Well, for you, how long have you been sober?
I got sober in 2007.
Okay. I got sober in 2012. So 12 years ago. And we come from the same little background of treatment, which is very different, which I'm really curious to hear your knowledge and experience. Will and I have, we were not 12-step based. It was more cognitive therapy based, which for me, it worked. It was definitely necessary. And I love the 12 steps. And I've had numerous guests on, and we've talked about this a few times. But I'm happy to have two other people in recovery, one who shares the same background as I do. How did you get sober?
A lot of pain. Trying every other solution. But basically, I went to I've been to 3 total treatment centers, treatment programs. The first one, I was 20 years old. It was a classic 28-day program. Introduced to 12 steps through that. I wasn't really ready to get sober. I just, had a cocaine problem. So I wanted to quit using cocaine because that was causing all the problems in my life. But all the other things I was doing weren't a problem. So that, didn't last very long. A couple years later, another 28-day program. Really wanted to get sober at that time, but it just wasn't enough time, I think, like enough separation from my small hometown. Knowing everybody was just too easy. And after 28 days, I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. So it was so easy to just go right back to it. So then eventually I went to a program, like a religious-based program out in the middle of the desert in Nevada. It was like a horse ranch out there. And I went there for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And that was like life-changing.
That's like more of an experiential program, or it was like 12-step based, or?
So yeah, it was religious-based with 12-step.
Okay.
Christian-based with 12-step. And it was like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was a horse ranch. So it was kind of this like working horse ranch, like not therapy. It's like we lived in this little like double wide trailer with, I think there was like 14 other guys there. Not comfortable, which was good. It's what I needed. And it was like, hey, if you want to leave, you're more than welcome to. You got to walk like 3 miles through the desert to a tiny little casino where there's a payphone. And for me, I had luckily like burned all my bridges. So there were times I wanted to leave, but I knew even if I make it to the payphone and happen to remember somebody's number, nobody's number I remember, like they're not going to come pick me up.
Yeah, the ones that you could remember, like your mom, or
they're going to be like, no, that's
Absolutely.
where you walk back. That's where you need to be. So it was every day, get up early. We would do like a Bible study, reading, and then you'd go out and work. And it was awesome. It's funny. At the time, I remember it being like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And it's like, I don't want to do this. And then now I look back and I'm like, that would kind of be nice to be able to go do that for a couple months now, So.
Yeah, it's true. And after that, you stayed sober?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the length of time, the difference between a 28-day program and a 6-month program. Huge difference.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you would agree with that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, just to let the brain and body heal. 28 days doesn't even get us to the point where we're scratching the surface.
No.
No. And it's unfortunate, but that's the standard model we have today for treatment in most capacities. I had an experience like you. I was in Montana, and it was a behavioral modification program, so not religious. I think it was considered a WASP type program.
Okay.
There was a number of other programs like this at the time. Utah, there was one down in Mexico, but we would work predominantly, and every few months we would have seminars. They were really intensive behavioral modification type seminars. I think my total time there was 13 months.
Oh, wow.
And we did all sorts of stuff. We built cabins, we farmed, we, even went out and did some hunting.
Yeah.
Outfitted buffalo and bison hunts. I didn't stay sober after that. And there's reasons for that, which I could get into. But that has still been one of the most life-changing experiences that I've had. Yeah. Whether you get sober or not in those experiences, there's a lot that gets learned.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
It's all part of the journey, I feel.
Right.
even the really hard times, the crazy stories, the ones we laugh about now. I mean, all of it is just part of the process. And I constantly look back on it and just think, wow, can't believe I did that. Or I'm really glad that I went through that process. And yet, like you said, being in it was really, really hard. Every day was a challenge.
Right.
Some days easier than others, but looking back, it was probably the best experience I've honestly had.
Yeah.
I made some of the greatest friendships there, pure laughter, pure joy.
Yeah.
Some of the stories to be able to share with other people fresh in that process with me, it was really an awesome experience for sure.
Yeah.
I wonder if they don't have as many experiential programs like the ranch style like they used to. Am I wrong? Do they still have? Do you know?
I don't know. Probably, if not, it's probably a funding thing. The place I went to has since changed names, and owners. I think the original owner eventually passed away, but the main person that was running it sort of moved. It was in Silver Springs, Nevada. I think they're now out in Elko doing the same sort of thing. I think it's called like Springs of Redemption Recovery. So they're still out there doing it. And it's pretty awesome because it's a low cost program, or if you don't have any money, they'll still take you in. So they run like on a lot of donations.
We need more places like that.
Yeah.
Especially detox, I feel. I mean, luckily there are residential programs, but the very first stage of getting sober is the hardest part. It could have medical complications, and every place requires that you're sober and have a clean UA coming in. So it's like, okay, now we're stuck in a situation of trying to find these very low cost detox facilities that are capable of doing some severe cases, benzos, alcohol, things of that sort. So I just don't know how we're able to change that or get more options for the first phase.
Right.
When you were at the ranch, did you go through detox there?
Yeah, I'm smiling because it was not, there was no medical team. There was none of that. Right. It was like, if you're going to get sick, then go get sick and go back out and get to work. And, the interesting thing about it was at the second program that I went to, they had like a medical detox or whatever, and I was going through withdrawals, and I think they basically gave me Ativan, and that was it. And I really didn't need it. But at the ranch, I had kicked several times. I was an opiate addict. Oxycontin, heroin, the whole deal, right? So I kicked several times. It was like just horrific. Never had the opportunity to get on Suboxone. At that time, it was like cash pay for the doctor and for the prescription. I remember making a phone call and realized how much money it was. It was going to be a couple $1,000s. And I remember telling the lady, like, hey, if I had a couple $1,000s, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah,
exactly.
I wouldn't be withdrawing. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that being said, that was like the easiest withdrawal I ever went through at the ranch, even though I was at the highest use. So,
do you think a combination of just being ready?
I think it was being ready, maybe
knowing you're out of sight, out of mind type deal, since you were so deep in there.
Yeah, I was like, I had no access. I didn't really have the option to just lay in bed and like feel it all. So my mind busy, my body busy, sort of physically just like sweating it out, and I think probably like a higher power thing too, of just like, okay, you're here, this is what you're doing, and I got your back sort of situation too. So
I'm curious, we went through a similar type of detox. Do you think, and even in your own practice now, that mind over like your mentality about it. I mean, to some degree, there's this really intense psychological aspect going into detox.
Yeah.
And if you're in belief that I'm really sick, I need something, you know, that could exacerbate symptoms or the other way around. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some science behind it, you know, but I think you're right that there's a huge psychological aspect of the detox, which keeps us in our addiction for so long.
100%.
Especially if we've experienced it before. There's the fear of going into that again that's going to keep me doing whatever I have to do to stay well, not even get high anymore.
Well, and that's like what you said too, right? The combination of one, knowing you can't lay in bed and you're out there, you don't have the access. It's, you know, because I remember being so sick every day, waking up sick until you have something. And you hope that you were smart enough the day before to keep just a little bit, you know, with you to get you through the morning until you can figure out the rest of the day. But the days that you decided to go a little extra the night before and you wake up with nothing, you're extremely sick until somebody texts back like, yeah, I have it, come by in 5. And it's like, boom, instantly you feel great and you're out the door to get it, you know?
Right. The withdrawals go away before you ever even got it, just knowing you could get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that there's something to that, you know, some psychosomatic aspect where if all I can do is lay in bed and think about how bad I feel, I'm going to feel worse actually, versus having something else to focus on, physically to do. There's no access to anything other than Advil, maybe, you know, and it's just like.
Well, it's so horrific going through it cold turkey that I remember it like it was yesterday. And I feel, you know, and this is just me. I mean, I now run a medication assisted detox where we do our best to keep our clients as comfortable as possible. So I understand that majority need that approach. But for me personally speaking, I feel like that definitely was helpful for my long-term recovery, is going through it so badly, not sleeping for 17 days and just remembering how awful that was, that remembering that kept me sober the days I was craving, even 2 months into sobriety, 4 months, 5 months, like, oh, you don't ever want to go through that. Now you're sleeping good. Now you're falling asleep immediately. You're getting a full night's rest. So it took me back and remembered how bad it would be if I decided to ever use again.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's been my experience too, right? Is I didn't have medically assisted detox, so I felt all of it. And I think that that's been a huge gift long term.
Same.
In the middle of it, I wouldn't tell you that.
Oof, yeah,
but
no, horrible.
Looking back now, if I wanted to, like, in my mind, I can go right back to that feeling.
Yep.
And I don't ever want to feel anything even similar to that.
Right. So. I agree. So I always, and that just goes into treatment altogether, not just speaking medication assisted detox, but just treatment in general, right? You take, back when I went to treatment, it wasn't insurance based. It was out of pocket back then. Insurance wasn't covering treatment like they are today. So with that, somehow your family, whether they have the funds readily available or they don't, they're figuring out a way to pay a very expensive, $40,000 to $60,000 program in hopes that it's going to save their loved one's life. And that accountability piece for me at the time, when I found out how much that program cost, about dropped me to my knees. Like, I knew my mom didn't have it, so how did they possibly pay for this? Right. So instantly, the responsibility of pushing through, I was no longer doing it for myself. I knew that I couldn't selfishly not get through the process for the sake of, that's a lot of money to lose. Where nowadays, clients are able to go to treatment. They have insurance. There's no deductible. It's covered at 100%, even at the beginning of the year, whether it's January or December.
Right.
And now it's this revolving door of, okay, well, I can take a break when I'm tired, go into treatment, give it a try again, maybe not take it as seriously, go back out on a run, go back into treatment. So I almost feel like it's a little bit harder now because, one, the length of time is much shorter, and two, it's easy access for somebody who has coverage where they're not feeling that financial burden or personal accountability to get through it because they invested their own hard work money or their family's money in for it.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I mean, there is something that has to change in our current system, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the aspect of responsibility, being able to take ownership over, our choices, our care, whatever that might be. I mean, my track record's not the best with this. I think I was in treatment 25 times.
Just have a little bit of a track record there, Will.
And a lot of that was, out of necessity, right? Being homeless, knowing that the option was there if I needed it, and saying, okay, 3 hots and a cot, might as well.
Yeah.
We'd go into treatment, hook up with chicks,
Right.
get out, we go on a run.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like, that was the game.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, that all came to an end. And I was faced with, when I came out to California, you're getting out of treatment and you can go back to the shelter, or you could take an internship position, but it was like, that was the first time in my life that I was actually responsible for my life. And that completely changed my whole outlook. I mean, almost instantly. I went through my program at that point. We're talking, I'm 4 months in, with the thought in the back of my head, I'm going to get out of here and go back to Arizona. That was one of the places I lived, and amazing as far as drug addicts is concerned, right? Cheap drugs, right?
Yeah.
Easy to get around.
Yeah.
People willing to give you money, or so it was my experience. And that was not, if I wanted to go back, I had to foot the bill. So there was no support. There was no free ride. And it just became it's like a rocket ride from there.
Yeah.
Things started clicking.
Mm-hmm.
I started taking it serious, and would not be where I'm at today had that not been the case.
Right.
Now I'm curious because, and we see this, and I'm sure you see this in your practice as well. It can go both ways, right? I can really connect with the young 21-year-old, 22-year-old girl who's broken, got, on drugs and getting help and encouraging them to be like, okay, you're young, you can get it one and done, first and last program. I was fortunate enough to have that. Will, you're a good example of somebody who has gone through the process numerous times, who come in at that point very discouraged, very disappointed in themselves. What's wrong with me? I can't get this. Am I ever going to get this? So I'm just curious if you can just share a little bit about how you felt through the process. Like, were you trying to take every treatment opportunity seriously? Were you taking it as a joke majority of the time, and then did a part of you think like, gosh, why, this is my 13th, 14th time in treatment. It's, I'm still back in this process. Like, at what point, because we have clients who we see it both ways. One, it's just another day for them. They don't care. They're not taking it seriously. They're comfortable with the process. Right. And ones who are really giving it their all every time they enter treatment and really hoping that time works, and then they find themselves a few months later back in treatment.
It's a good question. If I take myself back to that time in my life, and my outlook's changed quite a bit. In the present, every experience I had, I learned a little bit more about me. And, even if I didn't take that and apply it, or, I obviously didn't stay sober, right? I still had something that I gained. And I think, to answer your question specifically, there were many treatment experiences that I did not take seriously, right? Or I went in with the thought of, I just need to get better right now. I'm dope sick. I've got nowhere to be, nowhere to go. Like, this is so painful. I just need to get comfortable. It was the same type of addict thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Money's out, drugs are out.
Yeah.
Okay, ready to go, ready to check in. But, once I started to feel better in treatment, that's where I would just kind of check out of that headspace of like, I'm better now. I can do whatever I want again. Or I had, what I would consider other process addictions, right? Not that I was like a big man whore or anything like that, but women were a huge problem for me. And I mean, I'll get really vulnerable. I would get so attached so quickly to a point where I thought I was in love, and I would do anything. So, there were many times where my intention was good. I wanted to get sober, but this woman that I met, and I was willing to just let it all go. Times where I got together with a woman and, she would cheat on me or something would happen. And I would get that case of the efforts, if you will. Okay, can I use these terrible words?
You can. We will block them.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to know if I should be
Efforts
PC.
I like that, though. We could just say the efforts,
Yeah. So, essentially, there was things I wasn't like confronting in that. And my reality is I didn't really understand that probably for a year into when I would actually get sober. I made this commitment. I at some point put two and two together. I was like, okay, every time I get sober, like within a month, I'm like, shacking up with this chick and, things are not going well. I'm not going to do that again. So I abstained from relationships, I think for almost 3 years, 2.5, 3 years.
Oh, wow.
When I finally got, sober, because I knew that was an Achilles heel of mine. What it really went back to was, my own self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And like finding a person who, thought I was special, that made me feel special, but I wasn't really creating that on my own. So yeah, there was a fair amount that I did not take serious. There were some that I did, but I had, if you want to call it a co-occurring disorder or some other process addiction that was really, serious. And, yeah, I mean, I would tell anybody the same thing, 20, 30, doesn't matter how many times, don't give up, because at a certain point, you're going to figure it out. Things are going to click for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that you said, you talked about the shame people go through. It's very real, and we kind of box ourselves into a hole where we don't even think we're deserving of it. Or, that was kind of one of my narratives. This is the hand of cards I was dealt. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to die when I'm mid-20s on the street. Might as well go out having a good time. So, thankfully I had a family who, as much as I wanted to give up on me, wasn't going to give up on me.
Right.
Do
you in your practice work with a lot of relapse? Or what type of, what do you primarily see?
Yeah.
In counsel?
So in private practice, I have my drug and alcohol certificate, basically, not through CCAP, through a different certifying organization. Also LCSW. So if I were to say I had a specialty, it'd be like trauma and addiction. I see all kinds of, people that don't struggle with addiction or have a trauma background come and see me. But so the people, it's sort of an interesting realm where people do come in to see me for addiction issues. Whether they know it's an addiction issue or not is sort of another story. So sometimes I'll get people like out of treatment, like, yeah, I need to stay sober and I need support and I need to like dive in deep and look at the underlying causes. And then I have people that are like, well, maybe I want to look at my relationship with alcohol. Or other people that, are really struggling with drugs and alcohol, and there is relapse. People that have been on Suboxone for a long time that maybe are trying to work on getting off of it. Or so I see, like, in my current practice, like sort of the full spectrum of, drug and alcohol use to all the way to abuse and addiction and that sort of thing.
Yeah. How long did you have sober when you decided to go to school to be a therapist?
Yeah, good question. Schooling was like a really interesting journey for me because I dropped out of junior college, like I want to say 6 or 8 times. And by dropped out, I mean, I just quit going, so then my college transcript was just a complete disaster, more W's or like more withdrawals and incompletes than even F's at that point, just because I would stop going. I wouldn't even drop the class because I was using on the way to school, or, like one semester I shared rides with my dealer and I'm like, man, school is not for me. And looking back, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So, I had worked manual labor jobs. I was a welder and a millwright for a while, like landscaping, so many different jobs, because it was the whole game of I could like keep it together for 6 months or a year. And then, I mean, I make this joke and it's a horrible joke, but it's like my grandma could only die so many times for me to not be able to show up to work, or like some catastrophe. And so I'd quit before I got fired. And that was my whole get down. So then I was probably around a year sober, 8 months to a year sober, where I was, getting encouraged, like, you should go back to school. Just check it out. Just see. My dad was a huge influence with that, like pushing for that. I had other people, sort of mentors in my life, saying like, just check it out. I went back to a junior college in the Central Valley in Merced, and I think I took like an art history and a philosophy class, and I like made it through the whole semester and like passed the classes. So other people saying like, well, keep going. And I had, I went to meetings at this organization in Turlock. It's called Prodigal Sons and Daughters. Again, a Christian-based 12-step recovery program. They offer like free one-on-one counseling. They had meetings there at night. And then they encouraged me to like essentially secretary meetings there. And then I had people there going, have you ever thought about being a counselor? Like, I think you'd be really good at that. Which was, that was the through line through my whole educational experience, is other people seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself, saying, hey, you should explore this. So then I started taking like the classes for drug and alcohol counseling. Sort of like, well, I really don't want to keep doing manual labor, so maybe I could work in treatment. I was at that Merced college when I met my now wife, ended up moving to Santa Cruz, transferring to Cabrillo College, taking classes there, sort of chipping along the way. And the my wife was already like highly established professional, working in Silicon Valley, like in the tech world. So she was a huge influence and like mentor, like helpful in the whole college thing. And I remember her asking me, I was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years sober, going to Cabrillo. And she was like, so how long is this going to take you? Like, have you looked at I'm like, I can't look at that because I'll just stop going because it's so long. So again, like just doors opening in recovery. My experience has been, as long as I stay clean and sober, try to do the next right thing, like these doors open that I never would have even seen. Somebody that I knew from recovery told me about a school that had a satellite campus in San Jose that was like, they call it a school of professional studies. It's through William Jessup University, where they did a semester's worth of work in 5 weeks. You went one night a week, focus on one class at a time. And they had a specific program for drug and alcohol counseling that like you could knock it out in less than a year. And I remember going to this information night with my wife, now my wife, we were engaged at the time. And to me, I'm like, oh, I don't know, like that's a lot of money. And we walked out of there and she was like, hey, if you don't go to this school, we have much bigger problems in our relationship. Like this is an opportunity you have to take. So it's still, the plan then was still like, oh, I'll just work in treatment. There's lots of treatment centers. This will be great. Through that process, I had professors saying, hey, you should get your undergrad. Like you can get a bachelor's degree here, just continue on at the same school. I'm like, I don't know. Like I still like had all this self-doubt. I'm not smart enough. College isn't for me. Whatever the story was I was telling myself. And they just like encouraged me along the way. Like, no, you can do it. Like, we know you can, just try. I'm like, okay. So I started taking undergrad classes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I might get a bachelor's degree. This is crazy. Like, cause I would still see myself as this like heroin addict junkie. Like, you're just going to ruin everything.
Not going to school, not going to classes.
Yeah.
And now you're actually in a space where you're able to do it.
Right. And my perception was anything good that comes in your life, you're going to ruin it anyway. So don't even try. Right. So luckily, I had these mentors like, just try it. So then I'm like halfway through the undergrad. And then I start having these people tell me like, you should apply to grad school. It's like, you do not know me if you're telling me that, because there is no way I'm getting into grad school, let alone like complete it. Like that's insane. So just encourage me. I applied to a couple grad schools. I got in. That's when the light turned on for me of like, okay, so if I go to grad school, what does that mean? Licensure, what does licensure mean? I was starting to work at an agency in Santa Cruz at that time. So kind of like seeing what other people did in the agency setting, what that looked like, you know, how do you sort of climb the ladder? I want to say at that time, I had gotten married. My wife was pregnant. So I'm sort of assessing like, oh shoot, what does it even mean to be a husband and a father and in recovery and working, and like, how do you balance all that? And through that process, I watched in the agency setting where people either in recovery or not in recovery would sort of climb the ladder into management for the financial, benefit. But then their home life would like fall apart, or not fall apart, but they'd be like just stressed to the gills and not have enough time, and, couldn't do everything that they needed to do for their job and like attend to their kids and family like they wanted to. And for me, that family life was so unimaginable when I was in my addiction, that now it was like this insane miracle that, first of all, anybody would want to date me for a long period of time, let alone, start a family with me. So it's like, well, that seems really important. Top priority for me. How do I balance having a career to where it's like financially beneficial for me as well? Living in Santa Cruz, super expensive. How do I contribute to the family and still have time for my, unborn son at that time? And that for me, the answer was private practice, financially, and more importantly, so I could, make my own schedule, essentially.
Which is good that you found that balance, though. You know what I mean? Like, you knew priority was this miracle opportunity of having a family and contributing, as well as, having a career for yourself, but where it wasn't going to completely take away our focus, which is hard because sometimes, especially us with our addict mindsets, we could overly focus on something to where then it, even though it's not substance abuse, but it's, pulling away from other responsibilities, that can be problematic as well, which, I feel like I've done really well with the same thing, balance and prioritizing my children and my family and my marriage over work, and making sure it's not interfering, and being able to, separate the two and, put equal focus on each area of my life. Well, that's amazing. I mean, congratulations. I mean, because I know that's still a little bit a goal of mine. I am certified counselor and I did the schooling, but my husband sometimes is like, but why would you go back to school? You own your facility. And it's like, it's a personal thing, because same thing. I went to school and show up high and not even have the audacity to just drop the class, just not show up. That's exactly what I did. And so when I did go to school and I'm like, wow, I actually can get an A on this. Like, that's crazy that I actually am taking the time to study and pass this, and going in and taking my exam and taking it at San Jose State. I was like, oh my gosh, I did not think I even had the capability of completing something. So sometimes I look back, like, it would be pretty cool I'd still have to go all the way back though. I'd have to get an AA, then bachelor's, master's. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of a lot.
Sure.
I don't know if I can squeeze that in my wheel of balance at the moment, but.
What's the school's name?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
William Jessup
University.
University.
It's still around?
Yeah, I think they still have a satellite campus in San Jose, and their main campus is up in Rockland.
Okay.
And then I got my master's of social work through USC.
Good for you.
And my one, I don't know if it's bragging or whatever, but like coming from that place of junior college, dropping out, I can't complete a class. I can't even complete a art class, let alone anything smart. I came from that to, I ended up graduating on the dean's list from USC, which means 4.0 through the whole program.
Wow.
That's a flex, man.
Which was like, that was insane to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like unimaginable.
But even just hearing a little bit about your story too, and I feel like there's a lot of addicts have this about them, it's funny how it shocks us when we actually accomplish school or get like a good grade, because even, take it all the way back to high school, like barely making it. But how even though you would always quit before you got fired, you still had the drive to work.
Right.
So it's like, even if you look back, the capability was always there, right? It was just that the addiction side was taking over that, but we were capable at the time. We just didn't know it. But looking back, same thing. I mean, I worked all the time since I was 12 years old. I had that drive and good work ethic. Well, somewhat, I attempted. And same thing. I'd quit before and try something different, but it's the constantly wanting to learn something new was there. I just couldn't finish anything, so it's interesting to hear that. Because, I mean, my goodness, I have to say, I have the privilege and opportunity to work with the most educated, knowledgeable, smart people who have the craziest stories. You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting to see like very intelligent individuals who were just really going through some shit as kids, you know?
Yeah.
And but you know, they feel discouraged at the time, so I encourage people fresh in recovery or going through the process, it's like, don't get discouraged, because you very much could and will have everything that you want to accomplish. I mean, we are a testimony of that.
Yeah.
You know?
I actually wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Because I heard both, and I've heard both of you guys touch on this a little bit, but, you know, this, and Chris, and your dialogue going through school, getting the positive encouragement from the teachers and other people in your life, you know, how do you feel that becomes applicable in, you know, therapy, counseling, and do you see a value there, you know, in like building people up, even though they might not be doing good things, but identifying those in them and helping them find that?
I think it's huge. I really do, especially when people are in that really dark, like poor self-esteem, completely like negative self-image. It's hard to even want to do anything different or change in that. So for me, like I try really hard, and I think it's also important to be very genuine about it, to not be like making stuff up, but to try to like find the positive in whatever they're doing, wherever their life is, and to really highlight it. I think it's partially because of my own experience of people seeing positive things in me or in my life or in my character that I couldn't see at the time, and them highlighting it, and it forced me to look at it, because my self-image was like, it's all negative, it's all bad, I'm a piece of crap, I'll never do anything good, whatever the story is, right? So then when somebody points out this positive piece, it forces me to look at it, go like, well, is that true? Maybe I believe it, maybe I don't, but it forces me to do something about it. And then when somebody's like trying to rebuild, right, and they're sort of in early recovery, trying to figure it out, then it's even more important, I think, to like encourage that and to push them. And that's sort of the area where being in private practice psychotherapy, I think, is a little bit different than like in treatment. So I'm really careful about like self-disclosure in session, especially. But I think those are the moments where I will self-disclose, either about being in recovery, not always about being in recovery, but about like my schooling experience, right? When people are discouraged, and I'll be like, hey, you never know, like you just keep trying. And I might self-disclose a little bit about my experience. You know, there's been people where I've self-disclosed more, but like, hey, I never thought I would be sitting in this chair and not that couch. So like, here's my experience with that. And I think it can be really encouraging for them.
Yeah, I agree. What are some things, before we close out here, what are some things that you hold on to when times get tough? Like, is it a quote? Is it prayer? Is it meditation? Like, what do you do when times get really hard? Because, you know, life's hard. It's still going to throw stuff at us.
Yeah.
What do you hold on to get through it?
That's a really good question. Lots of prayer. I think that's important. Meditation. I mean, all the things you mentioned, right? When things are tough, a big part of it is, you know, my dad. How encouraging he was. He passed away a few years ago. How encouraging he was to me, no matter what. I mean, in the darkest, you know, like one conversation I remember, sitting in treatment after a family group, right? I mean, just like riddled with guilt and shame and like, oh my God, I can't believe you guys are here with me again, you know? And he was just like nonchalant. He's like, hey, a dad will do whatever if it means helping save their kid's life. Like, it doesn't matter. So like his encouragement to just, no matter what, keep moving, keep working, keep trying. We're going to fail. I fail all the time. You know, I'm not a model husband or father, you know, and I mess up all the time. But like that, I think I really hold on to that when I get in those dark places of like, if I were to be able to call my dad and talk to him right now, like what would he say? And I know he'd be like encouraging, not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that again, you know, which is what my mind wants to tell me. So just that positive encouraging, keep going, keep praying, keep like having faith in the process. And like, hey, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be okay.
I love that. Well, Chris, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming here today and sharing a little bit about you and your story and your knowledge. And it's always good to be able to educate our listeners and encourage them to keep going and holding on to that faith.